Good evening, everyone, and thank you very, very much for joining us. My name is Ian Harkins. I have been a tutor with Appleruth now over a decade, if I'm dating myself. And I've been tutoring the APs for the entire time that I've been doing this. Um, and with me is my colleague Jesse Anderson Lehman, who is likewise a stalwart of Appleruth over the years. The two of us are going to be presenting about the APs today, and our Inside the APs presentation is meant to give some guidance to those of you who are probably just now starting to buckle down and think about how you're going to approach AP studying and your AP schedules, and to help clarify how to navigate a little bit more. If you're seasoned at these or if you're just starting out, we welcome you all. There's a poll that's just gone up. We'd be very interested if you could answer a couple of quick questions. We want to be able to tailor these properly to who comes up, and it'll help guide the conversation as we go along later. So if that's easy to do, please just select a poll as we wait for some more people to join us. But in the meantime, like I said, I'm Ian Harkins. Um, my AP focuses over the years have been the histories and all the French and all the Spanish language tests, as well as the AP language test and the AP government, both US government and comparative government. And Jesse, you're a big bearded boy. Would you want to take it away and introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jesse Anderson Lehman. Like Ian said, I've been with the company as well for a little over 10 years. But yeah, my focus is a little bit more on the STEM side. So I tutor AP chemistry, AP physics, AP calculus, AP statistics. Um, I have experience in some other tests as well, but those are kind of the main four, as well as SAT, ACT. I mean, all the standardized test stuff, of course. But the APs is kind of what I enjoy the most and where I have the most sort of specialized experience.
And I only bring up the beard because I'm jealous of how much fuller yours is than I am. So what we hope to be able to give to all of you today is like over the years we used to get a ton of repeated questions, um, and more sort of people like looking for similar things about wanting some guidance, wanting some idea of scheduling, wanting to know like, am I doing it correctly? So we decided to start doing these. How this is going to work is we're going to, Jesse and I are going to address some of the frequently asked questions that we used to get all the time, give some updates about how things have come along. Um, and then I am going to reserve some time at the end for questions. This will still go for just an hour, but if you've got questions, feel free to type them up in the chat. If I want to, I'll just send a chat response, but I might save it for the end if I can. All right, with that, let us go onwards. So, a bit about us. We are Appleruth. We are a tutoring company and so much more. Our reason for being is that we believe when you change student self-beliefs, you can change their lives. And we do this through our three pillars of academic tutoring, test prep, and executive functioning coaching. And it's that middle circle test prep that brings us to our presentation today. I'd love to throw us into the deep end, Jesse. A very common one. Help. I'm not taking enough, or I'm taking too many APs. Now what? This is a way to start us talking about the scheduling. If we're here in January, it's a perfect time to talk about it. Whether you have taken APs before or you've just started, you're a novice to them. So let's start at fundamentals. Let's start at first principles. The APs are not mandatory for college acceptance in the United States, but they are a way for you as a student to demonstrate a couple of things. One, yes, that you took advantage of courses offered at your high school up to a certain limit, that you want to show you took advantage of the opportunities offered to you. But the other thing that you want is that you want to be able to indicate to colleges and universities, hey, this is where my interests lie. If you say to them, like, I'm really interested in studying engineering, it means an awful lot to say, and I've got all of these STEM APs at my back, and I've gotten 3, 4, 5s on them to really show like I've done the work. I meant it. I've worked my way up to a certain level. Tertiarily, actually, they also offer college credit. If you know the school that you're interested in going to, or if you've been accepted even as a senior, it still can behoove you to take these APs because for a lot of places, it can get you college credit. I actually, myself, graduated a semester early from my school, thanks completely to the credit that I had received on my APs from high school. Despite my accent, where I sound like I'm in a Downton Abbey cosplay, I did go to high school in America and to university in America as well. So that's a bit of my experience and what I've seen pass on to students subsequently. Um, so Jesse, you and I have had opportunities to speak about this, but like specifically about scheduling. Um, there's a lot that you have said that I have been really struck by in the past about as well, like trying to temper how loaded your AP schedule can be versus like what makes you a well-rounded student. Like what's the portrait of yourself that you are presenting to colleges and universities. So I wanted to throw that layup to you and see if that could inspire anything from you, because I think what you have to say about this is really, really interesting and worthwhile.
Well, sure. So the thing to remember here is that when you're putting together college applications and you're thinking about the college admissions process, you're putting together a narrative on paper about who you are as a student and what you're going to be interested moving forward as a hopefully a member of the university community that you're applying to. And so that narrative can be a lot of different things. Um, and APs are just one piece of that. There's a lot of variance in how many APs people have. I think that sometimes the narrative that sometimes the thing that people get in their heads is that like I need to take as many as possible, that there's some mark as far as the number of APs that colleges are looking for, and that there's like some mythical number of APs you have to take in order to be competitive at a university. And the reality is that's not the case. I mean, first off, there is a wide gulf of opportunity at different high schools as far as what APs are offered. Colleges know that. You aren't going to be held accountable for not taking a class if it was never even something that would be offered to you in the first place. If you're at a school that only offers a couple APs, then that's different than somebody who goes to us. I mean, there are schools that offer, I mean, almost all the APs where you get a whole sort of library of opportunity of what to take. So there's that piece of it. There's also the piece of it that's like, what makes you interesting and what makes you an interesting candidate for admissions is only partially your AP classes and AP scores, because colleges are interested in admitting people. They're not interested in admitting test scores, because turns out test scores are an imperfect measure of how good of a student and how long you're going to be successful at that institution. Um, they want somebody who's going to be there, be part of the community, and be active for 4 years. And so, if you're somebody who part of your story is that you're an athlete and you're active in sports, um, I don't think that it makes sense to ditch something that makes you really unique and special in favor of taking the AP. So you're like, well, I can't play my sport this year. I have to take my 10th AP. There's also like a marginal returns kind of thing going on here. Where it's like, sure, if there's one particular class you think is really important to what you're interested in academically, I can see making that a decision along those lines. But, you know, when you're getting to the point where you're like trying to add another one to your schedule, there's no room and you have to like drop the thing that you're most interested in. That's I think a step in the wrong direction. Same with like I was a band kid. I mean, I took band all through high school concert band, jazz band, marching band. I still probably, if I'm honest, took too many APs because in the end, I think I haven't actually added them up in a while. I don't have the number off the top of my head. It was something like 9 or 10 that I took. I probably took too many. Um, but at no point did I feel like I needed to stop being a band member in order to take an additional AP. That would have been giving up something that was very important to me and something that continued to be a part of my life when I went to college. I mean, I was in concert band, jazz band, and marching band at Northwestern University is where I ended up attending. So yeah, the decision is a holistic one, and it's part of what your whole academic package looks like, but also your extracurriculars. Um, that decision of like, I think I think it turns into a sort of compulsion. Like I need to take one more, I need to take one more in some students, and I wouldn't say that that's entirely accurate. I don't think that serves you as well as doing something that can make you really unique on and come off the page in other ways.
Well said, because again, echoing then what I've seen and what I fervently believe, like as we've said, the APs are that chance to showcase, hey, this is what's important to me academically. This is what packages me. And the reason I want to stress this is because what you just said, Jesse, about like, oh, maybe I'm taking too many. Don't ditch the other thing. Like, absolutely, because it's not as though like academics and more academics will only like actually nowadays in college get us so far. We do want to be able to paint a fuller picture. We want to see other things. And I actually have conversations with students now. Usually it's a student I've had for something else who's also thinking about APs. Like a perfectly worthwhile question is, well, okay, what's your schedule like this May? What's your schedule like this April? Are you, I've got a student right now doing quite a competitive academic decathlon where somehow she knows she's going to be away for a lot of April. So my recommendation to her has actually been like, okay, like you say you want to then take the May SAT and you want to take the APs and you want to do this, like something actually for the sake of doing well on some of these, something's got to go because we need to, in order to commit yourself to AP prep, I think something you have to make sure that you are free enough for that. And I'm not suggesting the APs must take priority. I'm saying that if you're going to do an AP, just acknowledge that it's going to take quite a time commitment. Um, there is, there's some great questions coming in, but I'll save these for later. Um, Jesse, have I forgotten anything else that I should say about scheduling, about course load for the time being, or just something to keep in mind as we go through APs? By the way, Jesse was a maniac taking 9 or 10. I took 6. And I was happy with where I wound up.
Yeah.
They told a picture, and I did plenty of other things. Um, but yeah, mine were mine were actually I think quite well targeted for me and who I was. And by the way, had nothing to do with what I wound up majoring in.
Right.
I was
No,
best.
I mean, like, I think, for instance, the one that I kind of regret is I ended up taking AP Spanish with absolutely no, like, I had gotten through Spanish 3. I did not really have an AP level knowledge of Spanish, but I figured, hey, I'm a pretty good test taker. I'll give it a shot. And I think I ended up getting a 2. And that was fine. It didn't end up hurting my application, I don't think. But it was like, okay, that was kind of silly. Like, why? Like, I
Ay,
wish somebody would have stopped me
ay,
and said,
por
okay,
Dios. Ay.
is Spanish really going to help you in your application, or would you be better off not putting that extra time into studying? The goal is to do well on these, and
Mhm.
that means a certain amount of commitment and a certain amount of effort, and it's good to be realistic about, how, like, if you're trying to take, I'll have students take 5 or 6. I think there's a point where that becomes very difficult to achieve because they're all
Mhm.
within a 2-week period too. Unless you have some conflicts and can delay one to the later date, which can be a blessing in disguise. But yeah, it's tough to fit them in.
Some schools also sign up for the later ones, like just by rote, which is again, can be a blessing in disguise, as Jesse says. So anyway, um, so let's start talking now about, all right, let's assume you're taking one of these AP classes. Um you're in the middle of tutoring, could be. How do I know if my AP class is on track for the exam? So this might get to a couple of questions that I've seen in the Q&A that are along these lines. Um, there are some wonderful resources that you can reach out to, even above and beyond your teacher in the class. The thing that I would highly recommend is that the College Board's website has, for every single one of the APs, the full suggested curriculum, an exam, it's called the exam course description, and it is handed out liberally to any school, to any teacher who takes on the moniker of an AP class. It's available for students too. And you can go on and you can see the units in the suggested time frame that they lay out for teachers to do. Now, some teachers don't adhere to the curriculum linearly. They bop around. They can emphasize different things. And by the way, that is a good thing. We want that. We want people have to be able to focus on the things that excite them and they want to draw their students to, that they can in turn excite and maybe use on free response questions and things like that. But there's plenty for you still to see. So you can see, ooh, we're right on track. You know, we're at unit 5 or 6 right now out of 9, barreling towards April. Usually what I find is a bit closer to March. Um, if there's been some sort of delays or if a teacher has been a bit slower about things, that you can say, like, oh, we really have quite, we're going to have to get through 7, 8, and units 7, 8, and 9, for instance, really quite quickly. Maybe this is something that I could use some help on. Something like that. Jesse, what do you think? Is that to me seems like one of the best resources that you can do. But what else would you suggest or would you emphasize that?
No, that's exactly right. That like rule the first order of business, just Google whatever AP class you're taking and go to the College Board website and you can get a very you can very quickly kind of get an idea for what needs to be covered in the course, how many units there are, what's in each unit. Um, and this can be helpful. Obviously, we've said several times if you're taking the AP class, it is true. There's a lot of people who self-study too.
Mhm.
Or like if your school doesn't quite offer the AP version of a class, but they offer something similar. I had a student who was taking advanced topics classes that were always like kind of close to AP, but never quite exactly the AP curriculum at his particular school. Um, and so all of this can be very helpful if you're self-studying and if you're trying to get an idea for what that looks like. And what I'll say is we're still early. I mean, it's January 14th. We're still early. We are not at like panic pull the ripcord point for just about anything. If you're in this webinar, congratulations, good work. You are thinking about this on a very respectable timeline, and you've
Yeah.
got a lot of room still left before the tests come up. So I'm a big fan, and this is something that I preach in all of my to all of my students that I work with. I'm a big fan of like working with your teacher. I mean, part of this is because I'm a teacher. I should say that I am a math teacher, and so it is, teachers are have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. And in my experience, when you go and talk to a teacher, they'll if they are following things in a little bit different order than what is normally recommended, or if they are choosing to spend a little bit more time and get a little bit behind where another class might potentially be in the curriculum, teachers will tend to be very open and honest about that. Well, yeah, we're probably a couple weeks behind of where I would like to be. But don't worry, we'll catch up in this unit. Or, in my experience, we need to focus more on this because of these reasons.
Yeah.
Rule number one for me with anytime I start tutoring a student is to like make sure that they are talking with their teacher and that we are working together as a team. rather than creating a dynamic where it's like, oh, my teacher is too so far behind. They don't know what they're doing. Hey, Mr. Tutorman, can you fix this? And it's like, well, no, we need to work together to make sure that you're doing well in the course and making sure that you're ready when it comes to the day of the test. So talk to your teacher. If you're nervous and you're saying like, okay, it kind of feels like we aren't as far along, and if you have certain goals, I mean, talk to your teacher about those goals. If you're like, I really want to get a 5 and you've been getting like a 70 in the class, it might be worth talking to the teacher so that the teacher can start helping you with like, okay, if you're realistically trying to get a 5, this is what you're going to have to start to do in the next couple of months in order to increase your knowledge and start putting yourself in position. Now, I'll tell you, both Ian and I have seen that situation too, where in a couple months we're looking at where a class is, we're going, good God, there's like no time left and you've not covered the last, like there is a point where you maybe need to be start thinking like, okay, I need to start studying on my own. My teacher's not going to get to all the material, but hopefully those instances are few and far between.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not naming names, but
It,
yes,
it happens.
it happens. It happens.
Yeah,
Let's move on, shall we, Jesse? How should I plan out my study program? Yeah, Jesse, how should I plan out my study program? I've gone first every other time. You
sure.
you you start us off.
Well, and then this segues nicely because yeah,
And-
this pathway of like go look at the College Board website, see what the list of units is in the course and exam description, get an idea for what's going through, and start thinking to yourself about like how do I want to go over this material. One of the first things that I'll do when I'm meeting with students is like take them through, particularly at this point, we're probably starting the second semester for most classes. Going back and taking a look and saying, okay, from the first semester, let's go through and let's check off the things that you felt pretty good about, that you got good grades on, that you felt pretty confident with. Let's go ahead and, put a star next to a couple things that we really didn't do as well that we want to come back to. And then let's just let's make sure that we're remembering what happened in the first semester. Because I
Mhm.
don't know about you guys, but it's like you take a couple weeks off for the winter break and it's like it flies out of your brain and sometimes it's hard to remember. It's good to go back and start even at this point, we're pretty early, but even at this point, looking and seeing, okay, give yourself an honest review of how that first semester went and what are the things you're really going to have to work on because that's going to start giving you an idea of how much material you're going to want to start covering and studying, what type of studying you're going to have to start doing. Part of that too is also at some point taking a practice test and getting an idea for how the problems look in an AP style scenario. Like what does the AP exam actually look like? Is an important part of that. I hesitate to tell anybody to go and take a practice test right now because we're still so early. I
Yeah.
mean, and especially if you're in a class, if you're either at a school that does block scheduling and you just started a brand new class and they fit a year's worth of material in one semester, or if you're taking one of the APs that is conventionally taught in a single semester, something like the government or economics or things like that, then you may have just started. I mean, it's certainly maybe the practice test option is probably a month or two away, but at that point you want to start making sure that you are, whenever you start putting together your study program of what leads up to the exam, you want to make sure you're familiar with what the exam looks like and what types of questions are being asked.
Now, can I piggyback as well off of what Jesse is saying? Because you are absolutely right about you're absolutely right about the considerations and how to approach the material. What I also find that I want to make sure that everybody who watches this leaves with the sense of is that there are two prongs to consider when setting out your study program. One's the material, obviously. The second is the idiosyncrasies endemic to any one of the particular APs. What I mean by that is again, I can speak from greater experience to do with the histories, for example. The history APs do not make you name dates and places and figures. Not really. They expect you to be able to build certain arguments, and they want you to structure those arguments in very specific, sometimes cookie cutter ways, for better or for worse. And you need to get good at making an argument, and whenever you're given a source, questioning who it's being addressed to or the purpose behind it. Something that, isn't always, we don't always think to do, but you're given a point for that. And so, heck, you got to do it. um, or something, something for the languages. You are just given greater grace for those if you show off the subjunctive. You just are. Bonus points if you can do the imperfect subjunctive. So just find a way to work that in, for instance. Um, that so we have to be aware as well of exactly how we are being graded. Right now, I think that if you're thinking about starting to review, be it with someone, with a teacher, with a student, with one of us, um, somebody from Appleroot, from Guidewell, then what you can do is, I'd say next month, maybe beginning of March, start to have a system to go back and look at old material. Towards like the end of March, you're going to be barreling through to the end of the content anyway. Maybe April if it's a particularly loaded class. Um, and come March, you'll be able to know enough and be aware enough where you can start to address full essay questions or full math problems if you're doing one of the calc ones, or you'll be able to give like more full descriptions if you're doing one of the AP sciences, for instance. Um, Make sure that come by the end of March, you're at least looking at answering some of the questions in the style of the AP as well. You won't be done with everything. Like April will still be really useful, but start to think about reviewing the content February and March so that by the end of March you are ready to start doing some of these questions that you can again find and pass tests on the College Board website. Um, if especially if your class isn't already doing that. When should I start reviewing with a tutor on my own? Yeah, like I said, next month, March. It depends. Like if again you going along this two-prong approach, if you want somebody really to help you review units 1 and 2 on something, well then yeah, that would be a good time to start. If I start with a student in April, odds are like what we're doing is they know their stuff. They can study on their own. They have studied on their own. They feel pretty confident about the material. And what we are doing together is we're just honing in on here's what you have to do on the AP government. I'm plugging holes. I'm not really sitting down and going through the AP course like I was literally this morning with a student for the AP Euro, talking like re-talking through the French Revolution with him. Like come April, I'm doing practice problems. I'm paying attention to how a certain question is graded. For example, on the AP Gov, I make sure like, hey, you got to know like here's this other point that you need to reference for a Supreme Court decision, for instance. Jesse, you're nodding, which makes me feel only encouraged.
Yeah, I mean that's 100% right. I mean, I do think it's wise for us to say that like if you're on top of things and you are looking to start working with somebody, then it tends to come a little later. Like yeah, maybe we maybe another month or two. It tends to be the types of students that we work with this early, like this time of year, do tend to be more if you're somebody who you went through the fall and you felt like things were going okay, but then it kind of started to get away from you, and all of a sudden you started really, feeling like you fell behind, and then you looked back at the end of the semester and you said, that semester did not go the way I wanted it to. I did not accomplish my goals as a student in the class for the fall. That is the situation where getting started with somebody a little sooner, maybe even this time of year, is can be useful because this is when you are reflecting on how things went. You have recognized that you didn't reach the goals you wanted to, and you realize you might need some help, not just to get ready for the AP exam, but just to do well in the
Mm,
class because there's a there's two things that are happening here. Yes, ideally when it gets to the end, you're going to want to have the exam and get your score on the test, but you're also in the process of receiving, working in a class that is going on your transcript that's going to be something that colleges look at, and they're going to be looking at your grades, and they want to see that you did well. And so that is if you are feeling like you fell behind, then I don't want anybody to construe what we're offering as advice right now as like an indication that you should wait until you're even more behind. No, if you're feeling like you need a little bit of help getting on top of things right now, then that's a different conversation, and that has more to do with like your place, like where you are in the class and how you're feeling with the material. Meeting with somebody, even if it's only like every couple weeks, once every couple weeks, can be very helpful for organizing your thoughts and getting you on track. But yeah, if you're feeling like the class is going okay and you've been getting A's and B's and it's been moving along well, then yeah, the transition to where additional help, either with a study group of your peers or going after school and working with your teacher or working with a tutor, to start preparing more for the exam tends to come more a little bit later, more toward March. Yes.
I'm getting excited about some of the questions coming down the pike.
I know they look really
Uh,
good. I agree.
I know. What are AP graders looking for? Um, AP graders just want to be heard. They're just like us. They like long walks on the beach. They like a Chianti Classico. No, um, it's a great question. Um, Jesse, you and I have both talked to so AP graders like when after you take an AP, there are a bunch of AP graders who are recruited and they are flown to somewhere quite central in the country. Last time I spoke to somebody was it would have been Kansas City, just because that was an easy place for everybody to congregate at. And they literally like rent out these huge warehouses and sit all the graders down and say, all right, here was the question. Here's what we're looking for. Um, so I am really struck at how, again, even for a lot of the questions that involve writing that you'd think involve subjectivity, it's remarkable to me how objective a lot of the grading rubrics can be. I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, but we've talked about the College Board website as a great resource for the exam descriptions. Well, guess what? They also have past exams going back sometimes decades for depending on the AP type that will go through exactly what the rubrics were that they were looking for and say this checked something, this didn't. And then they'll even give example essays of three different tiers: high scoring, middle scoring, low scoring, and give the reason why. Again, I'll go to the histories, for example. Like a very, very useful thing can be, an essay that you can earn a maximum of 7 points on, for instance. And here are the different reasons. What could be a very interesting activity is to write an essay, maybe answering one of the questions that you find on a past test or any one of the practice books that you can, and then take a day or two, go back and actually try to grade yourself. Did I do a contextualization and a thesis? It really is an up or down, yes or no, yay or nay. Um, they're not trying to hide what it is they're looking for. They're actually trying to broadcast it really, really heavily. And you can find that information on their website or in read any number of good books. I'm rather partial myself to the Barron's books. There was a spoiler alert. That's another question that was asked of where I like to go for resources. Um, but Jesse, am I? What do you think? Am I missing the mark? You could probably speak more to a lot of the tests that I'm less familiar with.
Well, yeah, so it's absolutely like they are looking for particular things. But I do want to preface this by saying that sometimes when we start talking about like, oh, there's this laundry list of check, 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 different things that they're looking for, sometimes the tendency in a student, particularly the kind of student who takes an AP class, they're often perfectionists, overachievers, used to doing well, and
Nerds.
used to
Well,
getting I like us, and used to scoring out of like 100, right? When you're used to being scored out of 100%, it sounds like you miss a couple and all of a sudden you're in the 80s and you're like, I've never gotten a B in my life. What's going on? Like this isn't good. Like that's not the way it works, right? Think about it, kind of reverse it and gamify it a little bit. It's like trying to pick up points, right? When you have a multi-part question on like the AP physics exam that goes through a whole set of things that they want you to do, and there's like seven bullet points that can get you points. Your goal isn't necessarily to get all seven of those because that's really quite impressive. Very few students are able to get all the points on a particular problem. Oftentimes, it's about hoovering up as many of the partial credit points along the way as you can. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good because AP graders are looking to give you credit. They're looking to give you points when you check the boxes. And you'd be amazed at how like the difference in my experience between a 5 and a 3 is, yes, knowledge of the material, but it's also that ability to pick up the points even when you're not so sure. Because the students, so often, students that I'm working with that are at like the 3 level or maybe the 2 level, they'll see a problem they don't recognize or they don't feel confident about, and they'll whiff, and they'll end up getting like 0 points on it. That's a path to a lower score, is whiffing on problems. Getting that instinct in you where you understand kind of the types of things they might look for and getting good at putting it down on paper and getting a couple points along the way so that you have partial credit so that you're never totally striking out on a problem can help a lot on some of these tests. And the only way to get used to that is by going back, looking at prior years' free response questions, and then going into the scoring guidelines and starting to get a feel for this. This is something that AP teachers should be doing already.
Mhm.
My favorite AP teachers that I work with are teachers who like even first test of the year they'll throw an AP free response style problem onto their test on like the first unit and will after the test is over come back and talk to the class about, okay, this is how this was graded and these are the point structures and this is what the graders were looking for. Because if you can from the beginning start getting used to that type of grading, you can do really well. That's honestly, it's like, 50% of your points come from multiple choice, 50% come from free response. The multiple choice is a little less strategy laden. It's pretty much about whether you know your stuff or you don't. But the free response is the part where it really helps to be familiar with what the types of questions are and what the graders are looking for, and that's all freely available. And that's one of the first things I encourage students to start doing is starting to think like graders rather than thinking like students, because you start to change your mentality a little bit.
Speak for yourself. I think there's a lot of strategy for some like the
Oh,
AP.
sure. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, I
the
should
multiple choice there.
not
That's
speak in absolutes. You are
speaking in absolutes, Jesse. To think I trusted you in that beard.
sorry.
Okay, we've got about 20, we've just under 20 minutes left, and I do really, really want to start fielding questions. We've had a couple of really interesting ones. Just to remind you again, we're Apple Ruth. If you've been inspired by us and or still feeling panicked, I hope not, but just know we're there to help. There's several different topics that we run AP workshop schedules for. We will later on in April run AP final reviews. So please, please, if you are interested, if you are inspired, if you just want to hear Jesse talk some more, and why wouldn't you, honestly? Please join us for any one of these that feels like it's appropriate. We're also just putting a poll up again to see if any of this. Again, we want to be able to tailor this as best we can to those of you who are joining us, and we want to make sure that we're meeting your needs. So I'd be very interested to gather this. Promise you, it's the last poll you'll have to do for tonight. Um, but democracy is, decisions are made by those who cast their votes. So, with that, I'd love to finish off with our question and answer. And there are some exciting ones. Um, all right. There's one that Marlene has asked. This we get in different spates. Um, Is there a huge difference on how APs are viewed versus honors classes by college? She goes on to say that her son's high school offers different levels and was told by a college office that he should take at least 8 AP honors classes for a competitive college. I don't know if that means like a college counselor or an office of a college that he spoke to. But my answer is not going to change either way. I don't think that either Jesse or I can go into specifics, perhaps on college counseling or anything like that. And I don't think I'm going to stray into this. What I will say is that it sounds like Marlene's son has this blessing and a curse that this high school offers really high levels of classes. So I think that justifiably what this counselor is getting at when they tell you that this number 8 um, is that colleges and universities do want to see students taking advantage of the opportunities offered to them in their colleges. Somebody taking 8 APs is going to mean a heck of a lot of difference depending on, frankly, where they are in the country, what the offerings were for them, what was the sort of terminal level that they could do a certain class. Um, Colleges and universities do get to see a curriculum as well, so they'll have that information. Um, so that they want to know that plenty has been, so that a student has gone through and really achieved as much as they can, especially if they do claim that they're interested in. And as far as 8 like honors and APs, I think that that's what they're driving at. Hopefully, this is something that we can spread out over the course of the 4 years of high school as well. Um, but that would be my answer. Jesse, did I miss anything?
No, it's yeah, I would say that there's not like a I wouldn't s- I, there's not a magic number. And there's no exact answer to how any particular college will view taking one class versus taking another. I would take that advice. So like the fact that you have a college counselor who is suggesting that I would listen to them, but I would recognize that that advice is probably being given in the context of like at our school, given the opportunities that you have, this is the mindset that you should be in. Not in the it's that advice is not being given in the way of like there's some magic number you need to make sure you get to 8 or else you're not going to be considered at these competitive
Mm,
institutions. Um, and I would also say that it's like again, like circling back to where we started, make sure that if you are aiming for a really high number, that you are making decisions based off of what interests your student and what they're interested in applying for and what they want to kind of go into first. Sometimes the instinct when you start getting to the really high numbers is you try to make decisions based on like scheduling or what will fit. And that can lead to a little muddier picture when then you're going to applications. It's like, well, you want to be an engineer, but you didn't take AP calculus. And it was offered and you chose to go a different route. They just think about the narrative would be my advice then.
Hmm. We've got another question here. Talking about a specific, but it's a chance for me to be a bit general. The question asks about the AP pre-calc test, which was introduced for the first time last year. Jesse, did you do the AP pre-calc at all, or?
So yeah, and it's been interesting. AP Pre-Calc, the information that they've given out and the way the course is structured, we've actually had teachers at the school I work at that have said that AP Pre-Calculus, the curriculum, actually feels almost easier than the pre-calculus class that we used to teach as a more general on-level version of the class. But then when it came around to exam time, the exam ended up being quite difficult for a lot of students. And so I do feel like there has been a bit of a disjunct between like what the curriculum looks like and what AP instructors were kind of told to prepare for versus what showed up on the exam. And the reality is in this particular instance, it's so new. The only information you have is the information that's come out. And the best that you can do is take the information that's been given and use the information that's been given and know that like it is in everybody's best interest for what the exam will be like, what the communication that comes out about what the exam is going to be like to line up with people's experiences. And so the fact that that was a lot of people's experience the first time around means that there are a lot of people working on both ends of that problem. College Board will work to adjust the exam. They will also work to adjust their messaging a little bit better on what people need to do to prepare for the exam. And they have released more materials to make sure that everybody's on the same page because it is kind of a unique situation. But yes, there is more material available. There are more sample questions and things available online if you go and look directly from College Board. Again, I'm kind of a straight from the horse's mouth kind of guy. That's where I always start. But there are also, because more information's come out and there's also been more experience on the ground, you'll also find that the books, like everybody rushed to get a pre-calc book out, a first edition, Barron,
Yeah.
Princeton Review, all of that. They were kind of guessing. They've got a better idea now. So if you can get if you can get a second edition that's been printed since in the past, in the past few months, you're more likely to get a more accurate read. This happens in the SAT and ACT too. We see this happen when a new version of the test comes out. But yeah, it's just I would go for more recent materials if you're going to buy a book from a third party would be the other comment I'd make.
Well, also, and sorry, Jesse, I was on my phone while you were talking for a good reason, I swear. I just Googled a past exam, and the first thing that comes up is the College Board AP Pre-Calculus exam questions.
Exactly.
You
Yep.
can have a look at what that test was last year, and yeah, seems hard. Uh,
Well, and that's actually really good. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ian. It's like that don't if you have had some received knowledge, like from maybe an older sibling or a friend or read it that has said like, "Oh, the exam was really hard." Go and look at the exam questions yourself and see what they look like and kind of start to familiarize yourself with what don't just take the received knowledge from the crowd or from other people that oh the exam was hard. Go back, take a look because they do release a lot of they will have released a lot of information, including the exact free response questions that were on the test from last year. So you can go and look and see what they were like and start to get an idea for what was difficult. That's exactly what teachers are doing right now, is trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, what did we get wrong? What did we need to focus on more? Where do we need to teach more? So
Question three in part B, like, has some sort of disgusting looking sinusoidal graph manipulation
yeah,
thing.
there's trig on there. Yeah, for sure.
Oh God, ugh, get it off me. We got another question I love from Ben. If healthcare is the career path I want to go down, which AP classes would I take? Ben, well done to you. So Ben, if you know what college or university, maybe I don't know if you're a senior and you're going somewhere and you're committed, or if you're or if you're thinking about that now. Um, Jesse can talk to you about this as well, but um, their colleges and universities offer pre-med tracks. They're not majors. They're a set of courses that you have to complete in order to be on the track for medical school. Like they have these prescriptions. I remember my university had a pre-med, a pre-dental, a pre-law, a pre clergy. Like there's all kinds of things that you can do. So they'll say like if you want to go on to graduate school, then take these in undergraduate. So working backwards, we can plot out our APs. But I know there was a bunch of the expected ones. Biology comes up, chemistry comes up, mathematics will come up, but also like AP English. AP Spanish wouldn't be a bad idea either, given that it's sort of the second language in um, in the United States. Although I'm 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 biased, of course, as the AP Spanish teacher. I actually, fun fact about me that you didn't know, Jesse. I tried to be a Spanish language medical interpreter at one point, but then got a different job. Oh. But but Jesse, like, do you work with nerds with good hearts who want to become doctors or work in healthcare somehow?
Yeah, so I would say just it's also a matter of I would set your expectations at you are trying like focus on the AP stuff in terms of like you want to be exposed to difficult coursework because guess what, going through medical school or nursing school or anything, it's tough, it's hard, there's a lot you're going to have to do, there's a lot you're going to have to know because we want the people that treat other people to be smart, knowledgeable people. So it's a route that has a lot of a lot that you're going to have to learn. So focus on that. You're getting exposed to difficult coursework. It makes sense for that coursework to be in the area of the maths and sciences that you might be interested in, and or that would be useful for that. But I would also just say that like because colleges are often very particular about what their pre-med tracks look like, there are a decent number of institutions that they'll be very happy to see that you did your AP work and that will help your admissions and make you a more competitive applicant. But they'll also probably, instead of giving you credit for that, they'll probably want you to take the pre-med specific version of that class at their institution because colleges are often very particular when it gets to like medical or engineering or like some of these more professional areas. They want you to take the classes that they have offered because they think that there's something that they do that's special and goes beyond. I ran into this a little bit at Northwestern where like essentially the classes that the AP credit that I got didn't really take care of stuff that was in my major so much as it
Mhm.
took care of distribution requirements and fulfilled like some of the more liberal arts side of the requirements that I had to where that freed me up to take other coursework, but it didn't really get me credit in necessarily in my major. So yeah, I would just make sure that your expectations are yes, you should take the AP classes that are available that make you a competitive applicant for pre-med or things like that. But you should also be prepared for the fact that you may not you may not test out of like organic chemistry or something like that because you probably still need to take that and especially need to take the pre-med version that's offered at your college. So,
Oh, kudos to anybody taking on organic chemistry as well. Not
mm.
that bad. Um, But unless anybody has any other question, um, I would love to start to wind us down. Jesse, you've in the past like left us with some amazing last thoughts. I'm wondering for all the people out there, do you feel like you could do that again?
Uh, well, sure. I mean, I think, and you guys have probably picked up on this as we've been going through this webinar together, that like Apple Ruth certainly believes in the fact that like students are whole individuals. Like you guys are people with desires and wants and things that you're good at and things that you want to accomplish, um, you're more than just test scores. When you're working on getting ready for APs, there's often a big focus on numbers. You want to get this score on this test. You want to get this many tests taken care of. You want to make sure that you meet some mark and get into a certain call. Like there's a lot of things can be very dehumanizing about this process. And I would just encourage people to make sure that you're keeping in mind, your own health, and if you're a parent, the health of your student. um you are a whole individual, and colleges want to admit whole individuals. I mean, what we have in the college admissions process is an imperfect way of picking people that match the institutions that they end up going to. And so the fact that all of this focuses so much on numbers is because that's what we've come up with as a society for how best to sum up your readiness and ability to do well in school. But the reality is, like, colleges want you to be happy. They want you to come. They want you to be there for 4 years because, frankly, they want you to spend money at their institution and keep paying tuition. So, like, the reality here is you're a human being, you're valuable. Focus on going through this process with an eye toward your holistic goals, and yes, focus on the numbers too, but don't let that come at the expense of letting yourself fall for the trap of thinking you're only those numbers and that the other stuff isn't important, because the other stuff is, extracurriculars, life, uh, travel, experience, all those things are things. I mean, you will hear stories in the college admissions landscape where it's like, the thing that made a student stick out on paper was not their high test scores, but was because they had they went on some trip, or they, did some service, helping other people, or they had some experience that was connected to their extracurriculars. Those things matter a lot to colleges too. So just keep your head on your shoulders, stay positive, and view test taking within its as within the whole picture would be my advice.
Jesse, thank you very, very much for that. I can always count on you. So thank you very much again. My name is Ian. This is Jesse. And we look forward to helping. We hope this is not the end of the conversation. We do not want it to be. And we look forward to helping you all in whatever other ways we can with test prep and with college admission. So thank you very, very much for spending an hour with us this evening. And good night. We hope this has been helpful.